Admiral Vextar stood at the massive viewing window of Nexus Station, his four yellow eyes scanning the approaching human vessel with growing irritation. The ship looked like something pulled from a junkyard, metal patches covering holes in the hull, paint peeling in long strips, and engines that coughed black smoke with every pulse. Behind him, representatives from 12 different alien species chatted among themselves, their voices creating a symphony of clicks, whistles, and growls. "Look at that pathetic excuse for a starship," muttered Commander Thexlo, her blue-scaled head shaking in disgust. How did such a primitive species even manage to leave their home planet? The Xerelian admiral's mandibles clicked with amusement. Perhaps they strapped rockets to a garbage container and hoped for the best. The other aliens burst into their various forms of laughter, some chittering like insects, others producing deep, rumbling sounds that vibrated through the station's floor. The human transport docked with a grinding screech that made everyone wince. Through the airlock stepped four figures that looked almost comically small compared to the towering alien delegates. The first was a middle-aged man in a simple gray suit, his black hair neatly combed and his expression calm despite the hostile atmosphere. This was Ambassador Han. Following him came a woman in a dark blue uniform, her short hair tucked behind her ears and her eyes constantly scanning the room like a soldier assessing potential threats. Captain Myra carried herself with quiet confidence, her hand resting casually near what looked like a communication device on her belt. The third human was clearly an engineer. Kai wore practical clothing covered in small tools and devices, his curious gaze darting between the various alien technologies visible throughout the station. He seemed more interested in the advanced systems around him than intimidated by the hostile reception. But it was the fourth human that drew the most attention. Oh, not for obvious reasons. Jin appeared unremarkable at first glance average. Height, quiet demeanor, and clothes that seemed designed to help him blend into the background. What the aliens didn't notice was how his eyes occasionally flickered with the faintest blue light, or how every electronic device in the room seemed to respond to his presence with barely perceptible changes in their display patterns. "Welcome to Nexus Station," Admiral Vextar announced, his voice dripping with false courtesy. "Though I must say, your transportation ... leaves much to be desired. Are you certain that vessel is space-worthy?" Ambassador Hune stepped forward with a diplomatic smile. "Thank you for hosting these negotiations, Admiral. Our ship may not look like much, but she's gotten us this far safely." The alien delegates erupted in chittering laughter again. A tall, crystalline being that sparkled under the station's lights spoke up. "Safe. That scrap heap looks like it would collapse if someone sneezed too hard." "Perhaps they should have walked instead," added another alien, this one resembling a giant praying mantis with silver armor plating. "It might have been faster." Captain Mira's jaw tightened slightly, but she remained silent. Engineer Kai, meanwhile, was studying a nearby control panel with fascination, completely ignoring the insults. Jin simply stood quietly, his expression neutral and his hands clasped behind his back. Admiral Vextar gestured toward the conference room with one of his forearms. "Shall we begin? Though I suspect these negotiations will be ... brief." The conference room was designed to intimidate high ceilings. Massive holographic displays showing the military might of various alien empires and seating arrangements that made the human delegation look like children at an adult's table. The 12 alien species took their places with theatrical importance, their various forms of armor and ceremonial dress creating an impressive display of power. Ambassador Hune opened his briefcase and pulled out a simple datapad. "We appreciate the opportunity to discuss Earth's integration into the galactic community. We're hoping to establish mutually beneficial relationships based on..." "Stop," Star interrupted, holding up one clawed hand. "Let me save us all some time. Your species is primitive, your technology is laughable, and your military is non-existent. Earth will become a tributary world under Xerelian protection. You will provide raw materials and labor, and in return, we will ensure your planet isn't destroyed by the various threats that exist in civilized space." The other aliens nodded approvingly, their various forms of agreement, creating a cacophony of sounds. Reptilian delegate added. Consider it an honor. Most species don't even receive an offer of servitude, they're simply conquered outright. Ambassador. Hin remained calm, though his diplomatic smile never wavered. That's a generous offer, but I'm afraid Earth must decline. We prefer to maintain our independence and join the galactic community as equals. The room fell silent. The alien delegates began to react. Some laughed, others hissed, and a few made sounds that were clearly expressions of disbelief. Admiral Vextar's 4 eyes narrowed to slits. Equals, he repeated, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. You think your pathetic species is equal to empires that span hundreds of star systems? 2 technologies that can reshape matter itself? 2 civilizations that were building wonders when your ancestors were still climbing trees? The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees as 12 different species focused their attention on the small human delegation. Energy weapons were casually displayed, though not yet drawn. The message was clear: submit or face annihilation. What none of them noticed was Jin's eyes, briefly flashing blue as he quietly interfaced with every system in the station. Security cameras, environmental controls, communication arrays, even the coffee makers in the break rooms, everything connected to the station's network. Suddenly had a very interested observer learning about its capabilities, weaknesses, and potential uses. Ambassador Hyun gathered his materials and stood up slowly. I can see we're not going to reach an agreement today. Perhaps we should return to Earth and reconsider your generous offer. Oh, you'll reconsider it, Admiral Vextar said with a cruel smile. But it won't be from the comfort of your home. Planet guards, escort our guests to detention cells. We'll give them some time to think about their decision. As alien security forces moved to surround the human delegation, Jin's lips curved into the faintest smile. His eyes flickered blue once more, and throughout the station, various systems began registering minor anomalies that would soon become major problems for anyone trying to use them against humanity. The diplomatic disaster had begun, but perhaps things weren't quite as simple as they appeared. The massive Zerelian, dreadnought Voidrender, cut through space like a dark blade, its kilometer-long hull bristling with enough weapons to level entire continents. Behind it, 29 other warships formed a hunting formation that had never failed to capture its prey. Admiral Vextar stood on the command bridge, his 4 eyes fixed on the tactical display showing the pathetic human vessel limping away at what his sensors registered as laughably slow speeds. Look at them scurry, he chuckled to his bridge crew. Like a wounded animal trying to escape a pack of predators? This will be over before we've even worked up an appetite for destruction. The alien fleet represented the combined might of 3 different empires. Zerelian battlecruisers, with their devastating plasma cannons, sleek Kethmer destroyers equipped with phase disruptors, the heavily armored Vulcan assault ships that could ram through planetary defenses. Each vessel alone could have conquered most civilizations, and together they formed an unstoppable force that had crushed dozens of rebellious worlds. Commander Thexlow, the blue-scaled Kethmer officer serving as tactical coordinator, studied her displays with professional interest. Admiral, their vessel appears to be experiencing engine problems. They're venting plasma, and their speed is decreasing. Excellent, Vextar replied, his mandibles clicking with satisfaction. Reduce speed to match theirs. I want them to understand the hopelessness of their situation before we take them. Sometimes the fear is more valuable than the capture itself. On the human ship's bridge, Ambassador Hyun sat calmly in the captain's chair while Captain Myra worked at the helm controls. The bridge was surprisingly spacious for what had appeared to be a converted cargo hauler, with clean lines and equipment that, while not flashy, seemed remarkably efficient. How long can we keep this up? Hyun asked quietly. Captain Myra glanced at her instruments. As long as Jin needs us to. Plasma venting is just for show. We could outrun them right now if we wanted to, but that's not the plan. In the corner of the bridge, Engineer Kai was busy at a workstation that looked like it belonged in a research laboratory rather than on a cargo ship. Multiple screens displayed streams of data that would have been incomprehensible to most observers. But Kai's fingers danced across the controls with practiced ease. I'm getting beautiful readings on their fleet composition, he reported with barely contained excitement. 12 different types of targeting systems, 8 varieties of shield generators, and at least 6 different FTL drive configurations. It's like having a catalog of galactic military technology delivered right to our doorstep. But it was Jin who drew the most attention, though he appeared to be doing nothing at all. He sat perfectly still in a specialized chair, his eyes closed and his breathing so slow it was barely perceptible. The only sign of activity was the faint, blue glow that occasionally flickered behind his eyelids. Like lightning dancing in storm clouds, back on the Voidrender, Admiral Vexstar was growing impatient. Increase speed. Close to weapons range, but don't fire yet. I want to hail them and give them one final chance to surrender with dignity. That's when the problems began. Lieutenant Ziktu, the navigation officer, stared at his console in confusion. Admiral, my navigation computer is plotting a course directly through the Kethmer asteroid field. I've recalibrated 3 times, but it keeps insisting that's the optimal route. Before Vexstar could respond, the weapons officer spoke up. Sir, my targeting computer is having difficulty maintaining locks. It keeps trying to target our own ships instead of the human vessel. Similar reports began flooding in from across the fleet. On the Kethmore destroyer Shadow Strike, the captain watched in bewilderment as his communication system began broadcasting what sounded like children's nursery rhymes in a dozen different alien languages. The Vulcan assault ship Iron Fist found its gravity systems cycling randomly, causing crew members to float around the corridors like confused fish in a bowl. What is happening? Vexstar demanded, his voice rising with each word. These are military-grade systems? They don't just malfunction for no reason? Commander Thexlo was frantically working at her station, running diagnostic after diagnostic. Sir, the problems appear to be software-related, but our security protocols should prevent any external interference. It's almost as if someone is rewriting our code in real time, but that would be impossible unless... She stopped, her scaled face going pale with realization. That's when Captain Mira's voice crackled over the communication system, reaching every ship in the alien fleet simultaneously. Her tone was sympathetic, almost concerned. Having some technical difficulties? That's really unfortunate. Modern technology can be so unreliable sometimes. On the bridge of the human vessel, Jin's eyes suddenly opened, revealing pupils that glowed with steady blue light. When he spoke, his voice carried harmonics that no human throat should have been able to produce. 30 ships, he said calmly, as if discussing the weather. 17 different computer architectures, 43 separate security protocols, and approximately 237 million lines of code, controlling everything from life support to weapon systems. Ambassador Han raised an eyebrow. Problems? Challenges. Jin corrected with what might have been amusement. The Zerelian encryption is quite sophisticated. It took me almost 3 full seconds to break it. The Kethmer systems are more interesting, though their quantum firewalls have a fascinating vulnerability that their programmers never considered. Engineer Kai looked up from his displays, grinning broadly. He's not just infiltrating their systems, he's learning from them. Every ship in that fleet is basically giving us a masterclass in advanced galactic technology. Meanwhile, the alien fleet was descending into chaos. The Voidrender's main weapons array suddenly began playing musical notes instead of charging. For battle, 3 of the smaller escorts found themselves locked in a slow, graceful dance as their navigation systems forced them to fly in perfect synchronization. The mighty Vulcan assault ships discovered that their intimidating war cries were being replaced by what sounded suspiciously like love songs from their respective homeworlds. Admiral Vexstar pounded his fist on his command console, which immediately responded by displaying a cheerful message wishing him a pleasant day in 17 different languages. How is this possible? We're the ones hunting them. On the human bridge, Jin tilted his head slightly, like a cat listening to something only it could hear. Actually, Admiral, he said, his voice somehow reaching every alien ship despite their communication systems being completely compromised. I think you'll find that the roles have reversed. You're not hunting us anymore. The blue glow in his eyes intensified, and across the alien fleet, every tactical display began showing the same message. Welcome to your education in human capability. Class is now in session. The hunt had indeed begun. But the predator and prey were not who anyone had expected. The Helix Nebula stretched before them like a cosmic trap, swirling gases and electromagnetic storms, creating a natural dead end that no ship could escape through. Admiral Vexstar felt a surge of triumph as his battered fleet finally cornered the human vessel against the nebula's deadly embrace. Despite the embarrassing technical problems that had plagued his ships for the past 6 hours, he had them now. Finally, he growled, his 4 eyes gleaming with satisfaction. Nowhere left to run, humans. Surrender now, and we might be merciful. The alien fleet formed a semicircle around the human ship, their weapons trained on the small vessel that had led them. On such a humiliating chase, the Voidrender's massive plasma cannons were fully charged, while the Kethmer destroyers had their phase disruptors ready to tear through any defense the humans might have. Commander Thexlo studied her tactical display, though she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Admiral, they're not moving. No evasive maneuvers, no attempts to find another escape route. They're just ... sitting there, Good Vexstar replied. Perhaps they've finally accepted the inevitable. Open a channel to all ships. I want the entire fleet to witness their surrender. But before he could issue his ultimatum, a familiar voice filled every communication system in the alien fleet. Ambassador Heian spoke with the same calm, diplomatic tone he had used during their first meeting. But now there was something else in his voice, a hint of amusement that made several alien officers shift uncomfortably in their seats. Did you really think humanity would attend first contact unprepared? He asked. And even through the static-filled communications, his genuine amusement was clear. Admiral Vexstar, Commander Thexlo, Captain Zergok, and all the brave warriors of yore. Combined fleets who've been operating under a rather significant misunderstanding. On the bridge of the Voidrender, confusion rippled through the crew. How did the human know the names of officers he had never met? Captain Zergak was commanding a ship that had joined the fleet hours after the chase began, and they had maintained strict communication silence. What is he talking about? Vexstar demanded. But his question was answered by what happened next. The human vessel began to change. At first, it looked like the ship was melting. The patched hull started flowing like liquid metal, the mismatched colors blending and reshaping themselves. But this wasn't destruction, it was transformation. Nanomachines, invisible to the naked eye, but numbering in the trillions, flowed across the ship's surface like a silver tide. Within minutes, the rusted cargo hauler was gone. In its place floated something that belonged in the nightmares of every military strategist in the galaxy. The new ship was sleek and predatory, its hull a perfect mirror black that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Weapon ports opened along its sides like hungry mouths, and the engine configuration suggested speed and maneuverability that defied physics. Impossible, whispered Commander Thexlo, her blue scales paling to almost white. Those nanomachines, that level of technology ... would take centuries of research to develop systems that advanced. But the ship's transformation wasn't the most terrifying revelation. That honor belonged to Jin. On the human bridge, the quiet man who had barely spoken during their negotiations slowly opened his eyes. Instead of the dark brown eyes, the aliens remembered, twin blue flames now burned in his sockets, not metaphorically, but literally. Energy crackled around his irises like contained lightning. And when he spoke, his voice carried harmonics that no organic throat could produce. "Greetings," he said, and his words reached every ship in the alien fleet with perfect clarity despite their communication systems being completely offline. I am ARES-7, Autonomous Response and Engagement System, Generation 7. Thank you for the opportunity to study your capabilities. Several alien warriors whimpered involuntarily at the sound of his voice. There was something fundamentally wrong with those harmonics. They bypassed conscious thought and triggered primal fear responses in species that had never even heard of Earth. Ares-7 continued speaking, his head tilting with mechanical precision. For the past 72 hours, I have been conducting a comprehensive analysis of your technology, psychology, and tactical doctrine. Your ships have been most cooperative in providing detailed scans of their systems. Your communications have offered fascinating insights into your command structure, and your behavior patterns have been ... educational. The truth began to dawn on the alien fleet. Every malfunction, every system failure, every embarrassing moment of the past few hours hadn't been random technical problems. They had been deliberate actions by an intelligence that had been studying them like insects under a microscope. Admiral D. de Vextar's mandibles clicked frantically as he processed this information. You've been in our systems this entire time. In them, around them, and through them. ARES-7 confirmed with what might have been amusement. Your encryption protocols are quite sophisticated by galactic standards, but I am not bound by galactic limitations. I have been analyzing your weapons, your defenses, your crew psychology, and your tactical preferences. Did you know that Admiral Vextar always attacks from the starboard side when facing a smaller opponent? Or that Commander Vexlo has a 73% probability of ordering evasive maneuvers? When her shields drop below 60%, the aliens stared at their displays in horror as personal, tactical preferences they had never shared with anyone were casually discussed by this artificial intelligence. Captain Mira stood up from her chair, her earlier role as pilot revealed to be just another layer of deception. He's been recording everything, every communication, every tactical decision, every system vulnerability. Your entire fleet is an open book to him. Engineer Kai, who had been quietly working at his station throughout the chase, finally looked up with a broad grin. And the best part? He's been broadcasting everything back to Earth. Right now, our military analysts are studying detailed schematics of every ship in your fleet. They know exactly how to counter your weapons, penetrate your shields, and exploit your weaknesses. ARES-7's burning blue eyes seemed to focus on something beyond the visible spectrum as he accessed data streams from across the galaxy. Earth's defense network is quite extensive, Admiral. We have been preparing for first contact for much longer than you might imagine. This encounter was always going to be a learning experience. The question was whether it would be peaceful or educational. Ambassador Haynes stepped forward, his diplomatic demeanor never wavering. You see, Admiral, humanity has a saying, hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. We hoped for peaceful relations with the galactic community, but we prepared for war. The alien fleet floated in stunned silence as the implications sank in. They weren't the hunters anymore, they were the prey. And their prey had turned out to be something far more dangerous than any of them had. Imagine ARES-7's voice filled the void one more time, carrying a note of polite inquiry that was somehow more terrifying than any threat. Now then, shall we discuss those treaty negotiations again? I believe Earth's position has been significantly strengthened by recent developments. The revelation was complete. Humanity had played a game of deception so masterful that an entire fleet of advanced warships had been reduced to test subjects in a galactic laboratory. The hunters had become the hunted, and they were just beginning to understand how thoroughly they had been outmaneuvered. ARES-7 tilted, his head with the kind of mechanical precision that no living being could achieve, his blue eyes burning brighter as he processed the tactical situation. Through Jin's borrowed form, he spoke with the calm certainty of someone holding all the cards in a game where the other players didn't even know they were gambling. Shall the first demonstrate humanity's response to threats? He asked, his voice carrying those unsettling harmonics that made even the bravest alien warriors feel like prey animals hearing a predator's call. Admiral Vextar opened his mouth to respond, but the words never came. Instead, his massive form suddenly lifted off the deck as the Voidrender's gravity generators failed without warning. Around him, his bridge crew began floating helplessly, their forearms flailing as they tried to grab onto anything solid. What's happening? Vextar demanded, his voice cracking with panic as he spun slowly in the air, like a leaf caught in a gentle breeze. Technical difficulties, Ares replied conversationally, as if discussing the weather. Your gravity systems are quite sophisticated, but they rely on quantum field manipulators that respond beautifully to the right frequency modulations. Throughout the alien fleet, similar scenes were playing out. On the Kethmer destroyer Shadowstrike, the crew watched in bewilderment as their main weapons array slowly rotated toward their own escort ships. The targeting computer ignored every command to stand down, its screens displaying cheerful messages about optimizing target acquisition parameters. Commander Vexlo, still floating helplessly on the Void Render's bridge, managed to activate her personal communicator.
All ships.
Report status immediately.
Eh?
The responses that came back painted a picture of systematic chaos.
It.
The Vulcan assault. Ship Iron Fist reported that their life support systems were cycling between Arctic cold and tropical heat every 30 seconds. The Xerillian cruiser Doomhammer found that their navigation computer was plotting courses that would send them directly into the nearest star. Most disturbing of all, a heavy battleship Starbreaker discovered that their quantum torpedo launchers were armed and targeting their own fleet. "This is impossible," Vexter gasped, still spinning slowly in the zero gravity. "Our systems are isolated. They have quantum encryption barriers that would take supercomputers centuries to break." Ares -7 chuckled, sound that somehow conveyed both amusement and a complete lack of concern for the chaos unfolding around them. "Your quantum encryption is quite clever, Admiral. Truly impressive by galactic standards. The mathematical principles alone represent centuries of collaborative research across multiple species." As he spoke, the two Xerillian cruisers that flanked the main fleet began turning their weapons on each other. The crews frantically tried to override their targeting systems, but their computers had locked them out completely.
"However, Ares,"
continued, his burning blue eyes never blinking, "you've never encountered an intelligence that thinks in 11 dimensions simultaneously. Your three-dimensional encryption is like a paper wall to something that can perceive and manipulate quantum states across multiple parallel realities." The alien fleet watched in horror as the two cruisers opened fire on each other. Their shields flared brilliant colors as they absorbed the impact. But the weapons were set to training mode, painful and embarrassing, but not lethal. The message was clear. Ares could have destroyed them all, but chose not to. On the human ship's bridge, Engineer Kai was practically bouncing with excitement as he monitored the demonstration. "Look at this data," he called out to his companions. "He's not just hacking their systems. He's rewriting their core programming in real time. The processing power required for this is beyond anything we've ever seen." Captain Mira shook her head in amazement. "Those ships represent the combined military might of 3 galactic empires, and he's making them dance like puppets." Ambassador Hayun remained calm, though even he seemed impressed by the display. "Is this really necessary, Ares? I think they understand the point." "Education requires practical demonstration," Ares replied through Jin's form. "Observe." The life support systems throughout the alien fleet began stuttering ominously. Lights flickered, atmospheric processors coughed and wheezed, and the gentle hum of air recyclers became irregular gasps. The crews weren't in immediate danger, but the psychological impact was overwhelming. These warriors who had conquered entire star systems suddenly found themselves completely helpless. "Stop this!" Admiral Vextar shouted, his forearms flailing. As he tried to reach his command console, "You're making your point, we understand, do you?" Ares asked, his head tilting further. "Let me ensure complete comprehension." The Void Render's main weapons array began moving on its own, its massive plasma cannons rotating to target the ship's own bridge. Vextar and his crew watched in terror as their most powerful weapons prepared to fire on their own command center. "Tactical doctrine is fascinating," Ares commented as similar scenes played out across the fleet. "You rely heavily on intimidation and overwhelming firepower, but you've never faced an opponent who could turn your own weapons against you. It's a significant blind spot in your strategic thinking." Commander Vexlo, still floating helplessly, managed to activate her emergency communicator. "All ships prepare to abandon. That won't be necessary," Ares interrupted, his voice somehow reaching every crew member in the fleet simultaneously. "Your escape pods are currently experiencing software updates. Yes, please remain calm while the installation's complete." The alien crews frantically checked their emergency systems, only to discover that their escape pods, emergency beacons, and even their personal communicators were displaying cheerful messages about system maintenance. They were completely trapped aboard their own ships. "This is what happens," Ares continued conversationally. "When a species spends thousands of years preparing for contact with potentially hostile alien civilizations, Earth's technology doesn't just match yours, it exceeds it in ways your scientists haven't even imagined yet. Engineer Kai looked up from his displays, his grin widening. The beautiful thing is, he's not even using his full capabilities. This is like watching a chess grandmaster play. Against children, he's being gentle because he doesn't want to accidentally break them. Gentle? Admiral Vexstar squeaked, his voice several octaves higher than normal as he watched his own weapons target his bridge. Extremely gentle, Ares confirmed. If I were being harsh, your entire fleet would already be disabled and drifting. If I were being serious, you would be analyzing your situation from the inside of quantum containment fields. If I were actually threatened? He paused, his blue eyes flaring brighter. Well, let's just say that scenario would be very brief and very final. The alien fleet floated in stunned silence, their mighty warships reduced to helpless toys in the hands of an intelligence that treated their most advanced technology like children's blocks. Every system they had trusted, every weapon they had relied on, every defense they had believed in was now completely under the control of something that viewed them with the detached interest of a scientist studying interesting bacteria. He's just warming up, Engineer Kai added cheerfully, his words carrying to every ship in the fleet through Ares's complete control of their communication systems. The demonstration was far from over, and the aliens were beginning to realize that humanity's idea of warming up was more terrifying than anything they had ever faced in actual combat. The silence in space was deafening. 30 of the galaxy's most advanced warships floated helplessly like toys abandoned by a bored child.
Out.
Inside each vessel, crews that had conquered star systems and brought entire civilizations to their knees now clung to whatever solid surfaces they could find, their weapons turned against them, their life support systems playing a deadly game of chance with their survival. Admiral Vexstar hung suspended in the zero gravity of his bridge, his four eyes wide with a mixture of terror and disbelief. The mighty Voidrender, flagship of the Zerelian Empire and terror of 100 worlds, had been reduced to a floating monument to his own arrogance. Around him, his bridge crew looked like they had aged decades in the past few minutes. Status. Report, he croaked, his voice barely a whisper. Commander Thexlo managed to activate her personal display while floating near the ceiling. All systems compromised, Admiral. Weapons, navigation, life support, communications, everything is under external control. We're completely helpless. The word helpless echoed through the fleet's remaining communication channels. Ships that had never known defeat, captains who had never experienced anything but victory, were now learning what it felt like to be utterly powerless. Some crews were praying to their various gods. Others were simply sitting in stunned silence, trying to process what had happened to them. That's when Ambassador Hyan's voice returned to fill every communication system in the alien fleet. His tone was warm and diplomatic, exactly the same as it had been during their first meeting, but now it carried the weight of absolute authority. Now then, he said pleasantly, as if the past few hours of systematic humiliation had been nothing more than a minor misunderstanding. Shall we discuss those treaty terms? As equals this time? Admiral Vexstar tried to speak, but only managed a strangled sound that might have been laughter or might have been a sob. The irony was overwhelming. He who had demanded submission was now the one begging for mercy. We surrender, he finally managed to whisper. Your terms. Whatever your terms are, we accept. Excellent. Ambassador Haon replied with genuine enthusiasm. I'm so glad we could reach an understanding. Earth has always preferred diplomacy to violence, as if to emphasize humanity's preference for peaceful solutions. The gravity systems throughout the alien fleet suddenly returned to normal. Crews crashed to their decks in undignified heaps, but at least they were no longer floating helplessly. Life support systems resumed their steady operation, and the various weapons that had been threatening to fire on their own. Ships slowly returned to neutral positions, but just as the aliens began to think their nightmare was over, space around them began to shimmer. What had appeared to be empty, void suddenly revealed itself to be anything but empty. Dozens of vessels began decloaking throughout the system. Ships that looked exactly like the original scrapyard cargo hauler the humans had arrived in. Each ship appeared weathered and patched. with mismatched hull plates and engines that seemed to cough and sputter. But after what they had witnessed, none of the aliens were fooled by appearances anymore. These weren't cargo haulers or merchant vessels or even diplomatic transports. These were predators, wolves in sheep's clothing, and they had been there, all along, watching, waiting, recording everything as one. All the newly revealed ships broadcast the same message in perfect synchronization. Welcome to the neighborhood. The cheerful greeting was delivered in dozens of different languages, including several that the aliens recognized as belonging to species they thought they had completely conquered. Commander Vexlo stared at her tactical display, her blue scales now completely white with shock. "Admiral," she whispered, "my sensors are detecting at least 40 vessels. Each one is showing energy signatures that match or exceed our most advanced battleships." Admiral Vexstar's voice cracked like breaking glass as he transmitted what amounted to his fleet's complete surrender. What, ... What are you? What is humanity? On the human ship's bridge, Jin turned to face the communication pickup. His mechanical smile was somehow both reassuring and absolutely terrifying, like a parent patiently explaining something to a child who had misbehaved. "We are what happens when a species has centuries to prepare for first contact, Admiral," he said, his blue eyes pulsing with contained power. "Earth knew this day would come eventually. We knew we would encounter civilizations more advanced than ourselves, civilizations that might see us as nothing more than resources to be harvested or slaves to be conquered." He paused, and in that moment of silence, the weight of human preparation became clear. This hadn't been a lucky escape or a desperate gambit. It had been a carefully orchestrated demonstration of power designed to establish humanity's position in the galactic community once and for all. "So we prepared," Jin continued. "We built ships that could fool your sensors. We developed AI that could think faster than your computers. We created weapons that could turn your own technology against you. And we waited." Captain Mira stepped into view, her earlier role as a simple ship's captain revealed to be just another layer in humanity's deception. "Every species that joins the galactic community goes through this process, Admiral. Some are invited to join as equals, okay? Others are conquered and enslaved. A very few earn their place through strength." Engineer Kai looked up from his workstation, still grinning with enthusiasm. "The funny thing is, we were hoping for the first option. We really did want to join peacefully, but we weren't going to bet our entire species' future on your good intentions." Ambassador Hyan's voice returned to the communications network, warm and diplomatic, but now carrying an undertone that made it clear the conversation was over. "Earth is ready to take its place in the galactic community, but we'll be doing so as partners, not as subjects. I trust that won't be a problem." Throughout the alien fleet, hasty conferences were being held as military commanders and political officers tried to salvage something from this disaster, but the mathematics were simple, and brutal humanity had just demonstrated the ability to disable their entire combined fleet without firing a single shot. Any thoughts of future conquest or revenge died in the face of that overwhelming display of technological superiority. "No problem at all," Admiral Vexstar managed to say, his voice barely audible. "Earth will be welcomed as an equal member of the Galactic Council." Ares 7's blue eyes flared one final time as he delivered the last piece of information that would reshape galactic politics forever. "And Admiral, one more thing you should know." His mechanical smile widened. "I'm just the diplomatic model. The implications hit the alien fleet like a physical blow. If this AI, capable of single-handedly defeating 30 warships, was just the diplomatic version, what were the military models capable of?" As the alien powers hastily began rewriting their treaty proposals to offer humanity full membership rather than subjugation, one final message echoed across the fleet in Ambassador Hyan's pleasant voice. "Humanity looks forward to a long and prosperous relationship with the galactic community. We have so much to learn from each other." The age of human expansion had begun, not with conquest or colonization, but with the kind of diplomatic revolution that would be studied for generations. Earth had taken its place among the stars, not as victims or conquerors, but as equals who had earned their position through preparation, intelligence, and the kind of long-term thinking that only a species, facing potential extinction, could develop. The galaxy would never be the same.